Much to the chagrin of MMA fans, Belal Muhammad sits atop the welterweight division. Once home to GOAT contender George St. Pierre and violence legend Robbie Lawler, Muhammad's place on the throne feels underwhelming. Despite wresting the title from Leon Edwards, his lack of potency from his preferred top position, technical execution, and generally boring style seem to mark him out among the lineage at 170 pounds. He looks to defend his title at UFC 315 this Saturday, May 10th, in Montreal, Canada, against Della Maddalena, and he has the chance to change that. A great foil to Muhammad as an exciting, heavy-handed finisher. His love of bodywork and metal hands have made me a huge fan. Though I've talked down on Muhammad, he's a strategically sound fighter, the rematch versus Edwards being a prime example of this. If you want to see a video about that fight, check this out. Muhammad is great at winning a fight on optics, staying competitive enough in the striking, and finding a great takedown to maintain a very flaccid control on top. Pause. He might not be the scariest champion to come up against, but he is assuredly a frustrating one. If Della Maddalena needs to focus on anything in this fight, it is his takedown defense. This first layer of grappling defense involves keeping space between your hips and your opponent while staying on your feet. Della Maddalena is no grappling slouch. In fact, he's quite crafty. If he were to have a weakest phase of grappling, however, it would be his takedown defense. Della Maddalena often allows his opponents right onto his hips. He will quickly find an overhook and start digging the underhook to pull the opponent up from them and enter a body lock, which is a much easier position to defend from. In assessing the matchup with Muhammad, however, he would do well to try and prevent this phase entirely. Muhammad's fence wrestling was incredibly effective against Leon Edwards, one of the premier clinchers in the sport. So is JDM toast? Does he even have a chance if he serves up his hips so easily? He does. When Della Maddalena isn't caught overextending his combinations, he does quite well at turning his hips while sprawling and posting on the head to push them off. This has incredible synergy with the uppercut. The uppercut is one of the best counters to a shooting opponent. The knee is great, as we saw in the Burns fight, but it presents the leg if it doesn't land flush. The uppercut, on the other hand, can turn right into an underhook or a post upon landing. Once JDM is able to break his opponent's lock, he can snap them down in the front headlock to work knees, while his arms and choke attempts negate the further takedown. All of this worked a treat against Hafez, but we can't expect it to have the same effect on Muhammad. By this point in the fight, Hafez was dead tired from the bodywork, and Muhammad himself has a huge gas tank. Rather than try and turn into Jose Aldo overnight, who's also fighting on this card, Della Maddalena can simply make a few tweaks in his approach to fighting wrestlers. Enter the down block. Jean Silva showed us a great way to maintain striking potency while being prepared for the takedown against Drew Dober. Della Maddalena tends to swing a bit wide with both hands when he senses a finish. He gets a little overzealous. Rather than overextend himself, he can focus his lead hand on feinting while keeping a tight, low guard and his elbow pressed up against his ribs. This stance still allows for the rear hand uppercut to be used with abandon to counter the shot. When sprawling, the lead elbow is able to dig into the chin and shoulder and keep them from entering the hips. Throughout the exchange, this can easily convert into an underhook to build the opponent back up to land knees. Silva has shown that this down block guard can work beautifully even when pressed up against the cage. The best part? It's tailor-made for grappling defense in the open stance. Rather than presenting your opponent with squared hips, the open stance blades the hips more, making it harder for a successful blast double. It presents the single leg as the only viable takedown in open space. Della Maddalena does tend to fight from southpaw, but will switch throughout. Muhammad himself is no stranger to switching stances in combination, but should Della Maddalena have this in mind, he can easily keep the fight in the open stance to bait the single leg and down block it. His footwork and striking is much more considered than Muhammad's, and Muhammad struggled with striking in the open stance anyway. Incorporating a preemptive down block into his stance could work wonders for him if he ends up getting pushed against the cage. The longer he can keep the fight standing, the more he can send thudding punches into Muhammad's body, tire him, and chin him on a linear retreat. How do you see this fight playing out this weekend? Will Della Maddalena save the welterweight division? If you're still not sure, I wrote a comprehensive article breaking down this matchup in Della Maddalena's likeliest path to victory. You can check it out on my friend Ghost's Substack, Phantom Punch Breakdowns. He's a premier analyst, and his channel's right here. Be sure to subscribe to both of our Substacks and YouTube channels at the link below for even deeper combat sports analysis. Thanks so much.